Hello, I'm Lydia and you're listening to Lens from the Fens. Hello again everyone, this is another new episode for Lens from the Fens. I am Lydia. Again, I hope that all of you are doing well. Just reflecting on what has already happened, not just to the UK but across the world, with new restrictions coming into place to steady the second wave. I understand that quite a lot of people are going back into national lockdown type of restrictions again, depending on whether you're in the medium, high or very high tier. But I still hope that some of you are able to get outdoors when you can, albeit if you're visiting people while doing social distancing. I think nature is still going to be there for us during this time. I've certainly appreciated it more. And with what I have experienced in the past week or so, it's just made me love it even more. So I think I'm just going to get straight into what I got up to in the past day. I was initially going to do another walk, talk and shoot episode, but I realised once I got to this location that I struggled to get a consistent feed as to, in terms of what I would normally record for such an episode. There was quite a few people around and it was just difficult to portray what I was seeing at the time. So I recorded some sound extracts from when I was there, and while I'm sitting in for this episode, I will just go through what I saw throughout my time there. So yesterday morning, which would be Saturday the 17th of October, I had an alarm set for 5 a.m, travelled about an hour and a half through past Leicester to Bradgate Park, which is a public park in Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire, England, and it covers around 850 acres of land. So if you're already familiar with Bradgate Park, you would know that it is basically a large area in which different deer species inhabit and have inhabited for the last few centuries. They were originally used for hunting, unfortunately, by different earls and noblemen born from high-class families. If you want to find out more about the history of Bradgate Park, you're more than welcome to visit the bradgatepark.org website, which is run by the Bradgate Park Trust. So there are two species of deer that live within the park, and these are red deer and fallow deer. So if you haven't guessed already, you would now realise that I visited this deer park at the time of when the deer rutting season would be underway. So these rut activities peak during the 3 hours after dawn and those before dusk. So this explains my early arrival, as this is at the optimum temperature for which the stags are able to compete with other stags to collect their harem, which is the group of does in which they would father their own offspring for next year. So the stags often start off their rutting activity by bellowing, which sort of gives the impression to other stags that this is their area, this is their harem, back off, essentially. But if there is a time where another stag gets too close or tries to take a few of the does, then that will result in the clashing of antlers between the stags. And it would either result in the younger stag being defeated and having been pushed out, or the stag that held the harem would then lose his harem and the younger stag would take ownership. So when I first entered the park on that Saturday morning, I was just surrounded by the bellows of the red deer, and it's one of my favourite animal sounds. It's very raw and it just emits so much power, as which these animals do when they end up confronting other stags. So initially I had a really bad lighting issue. I didn't have a bright, glorious sunrise as I was expecting when I arrived. It was very overcast, which resulted in not enough light to work with, basically. So I had my camera set up on a very high ISO number, and because I saw some of the younger stags near the entrance to the park. But because there was also a lot of tree cover, I had further issues with too much shadow for my subject. So I had to wait a little while for more sun to try and come through the clouds, just so I wasn't putting too much noise on my images, and to see if the stags would eventually come out of the bracken and the trees and either do some more bellowing or some sort of activity out in the open where there'll be more light. So as there was more daylight coming or trying to come through the clouds, more activity was actually coming from the harems and the stags that were in the forest area. So I got some really nice sound recordings from that, which I will play at the end of this episode actually. And as well as the red stags doing a lot of the bellowing, there was also the fallow stags that were doing a bit of calling too. So there are differences between the types of bellowing that are made from a certain type of deer species. The red deer stags often do a long call. It would definitely be a long call to start with and then grunts at the end. I certainly heard a lot of those sort of calls throughout my time there, which was pretty cool. And the fallow stags, they often do short, sharp bursts of bellow. So as I made my way through the park, I came across two young stags. They wouldn't have been this year's stags born, but they did have their first set of antlers growing through. So they were very young, very immature, and this rutting season for them would essentially be the season where they would prepare themselves to know what to do when they rut with other stags. But these two young stags were also with a much larger senior stag, which I was a bit intrigued with at first, because a lot of the larger stags, they would be the ones competing for the harem, holding their harem and fending off any other stags who would want to try and take hold of it. But it seemed as though this older stag didn't have a harem of his own, so he wasn't really wanting to defend anything because he had nothing to defend. So those three were grazing on the field to the left of me for quite some time, and then the older stag started hearing the other stags bellowing from the forest, which is actually part of the deer sanctuary, so no one goes in there. It's very full of bracken, lots of trees, lots of cover, which is just a perfect haven for the deers because they're still wild, and despite them being used to people, they obviously want to be in a safe space when they can. So this older stag started hearing the bellows from the forest, and he started walking in my direction. Now, obviously, when there's a lot of testosterone from these stags, it makes them more prone to injure either another deer or potentially the people if they get too close. So I was at the recommended distance away from the stag at first. I was 30 metres or so away. But as he started walking in my direction, I suddenly got very wary that he had locked his gaze, and I took pictures, obviously. I did have my camera in front of me, but I just got to a point where, right, that's too close. I need to back off and give him the space he needs, which is for any other sort of wildlife. You don't want to impede on their space because either you or the animal could get injured. So I took the pictures, I backed off slow, I didn't turn my back on him because that isn't a great thing to do. But he just wasn't that interested. He obviously walked in my direction, but as I moved, he didn't follow. He just carried on in a straight line across the path which I was on and across the little stream and into the forest. And another thing that the stag was doing while walking past me was that it was smelling the air to find a scent of a doe that would be prime for mating. It's a bit of a comical thing to witness. They'll turn their upper lip and they will show their teeth. It's just a reaction to them smelling the air to know when does are ready for mating. So I did get a few pictures of that, which was quite funny to see. But yeah, he just carried on. He grazed for a bit more at the edge of the forest and then continued on his way. But it was a really nice experience. I obviously kept my distance throughout, and I got some really nice pictures from it. I don't think I have managed to get that close to a red deer when I've experienced them in other deer parks during the rutting season. So it was really cool to watch. So obviously there was quite a few of the red deer harems around, but there was also a lot of the fallow deer and their harems doing a lot more of the noise and a lot more action, really. So there were groups of about 15 to 20 does, which was all controlled by the senior fallow stags. And they were constantly bellowing, they were constantly doing that short, sharp burst of call. And yeah, they were just everywhere. A lot of the red deers were either hiding away or they were sort of over the hill, out of sight. But the fallow deer were pretty common across the whole of the park to see them calling, and the senior stags were often just shooing off the younger stags rather than rutting. But I made my way through the park. I then started to come back down because a lot of the activity was happening in one area in particular. And that was when I saw another harem of fallow cross the path onto an open field, and there was a pair of young stags properly rutting. So it was distant. I didn't get an awful lot of close-up shots of that. But it was very similar to when I saw the rutting fallows at Holcombe Hall a couple of years ago, where the harem was just sort of off in the background and these two stags were just going at it for ages. The antlers were properly locked, they were twisting their heads side to side. And then the senior stag that was actually in charge of that harem went to break it up. I think the younger stags were either doing a really good impression of a real rutting action, but the senior stag was sort of like, no, this is how you do it, and he broke them up. But yeah, even during the time, I got quite a few pictures that I was really pleased with, especially of the red deer stags. I just think the size of them and the bellows they give off, they're definitely a wildlife sort of call that I vividly remember and continue to love it. I only started learning about deer rutting season a couple of years back, but it's definitely a call that it makes the autumn pretty much, because it happens around from October through to November. It's very much a sound of autumn that I've come to familiarise myself with. So yeah, I've already posted a picture up on my social media of one of the senior red deer stags coming through the forest out into the open. But I'll upload some more over time, especially of the other stag that was walking in my direction. It was quite intimidating for that to happen, but like I said, I kept my distance, as I hope any other respectable person would do, and I got some good pictures out of it. So yeah, I'll put them up over time, and yeah, I'd highly recommend you doing it if you visit either one of the deer parks around the country. It's just a better opportunity to get those rutting pictures that you want. So as it goes, I recorded the birds I saw there as well. It's a thing I do every day, wherever I go. I record every bird I see. And in this instance, there was a lot of jackdaws that were foraging on the ground. There was a lot of acorns that had fallen, so I assume a few of them were eating those. And there was also green woodpeckers around, quite a few were calling, and one I saw flying between the trees. There was also quite a lot of grey wagtails. I think there was definitely 3 or 4 in one area, which was really cool to see. And then there was the pied wagtails, there was blue tits, there was great tits. There was also the river that runs through the park, which is the border between the public footpath and the deer sanctuary. So there was moorhens, mallards, black-headed gulls, and there was a little wren as well. There was an area where it was like a widened bit of the river, and there was lots of fish in there. And on the other side there was a lot of bracken, which separated the path, the river, to where the fallow harems were. And it was in that bracken that I saw the wren just sort of bobbing about and calling away. So that was really nice. And then inevitably there were the grey squirrels, who were also hunting and caching for food. So yeah, it wasn't just the deers that I was looking out for. I was looking out for the other bird life as well. There was quite a few of the young grey herons out in the open field. They weren't really hunting, I think they were just gathering together. It was quite early in the morning, so they'd probably just woken up, they were stretching their wings, they were doing a bit of flying around. But yeah, I saw a good variety of birds, and yeah, the deer experiences that I had there were really enjoyable. So like I said, I highly recommend this wildlife event or something that you witness to. You don't have to take pictures of it, but I think just being surrounded by these animals that emit so much power at this time of year, and the noises that they make are just one of the most incredible sounds. But I still advise you to do your research, to give these animals the respect that they need. Do not invade their space. Don't get so close to take a selfie. As much as I hate to say that, I have seen people at parks over the past couple of years getting way too close to a stag, which would be resting on the ground, just to get a selfie with it. And it angers me because they're then putting themselves at risk. And yeah, I just want people to use their common sense to know that these are wild animals and they could do a lot of harm to you. I'll highly stress that. Just be aware of your surroundings. Still enjoy it, obviously, but I just want people to just be aware of being around these animals that could potentially hurt them, if not other people or even the animal themselves. So just keep that in mind when you go, or if ever you go to a place where there's the deer rutting season around. I don't think there's an awful lot of time left now. I think going up towards the end of October is sort of where the rutting season dies down. The harems would have been collected, the stags would have earned their place or have lost them. So if you get the chance in the next couple of weeks, definitely have a look, see what deer areas are near you. And who knows, this might be your next wildlife events that you enjoy for years to come. So as I promised, I will now end this episode by playing a snippet of just some of the deer calls that I heard while I was at Bradgate Park. I will upload a few more images onto my social media sites, which is Pinfold Photographic on Facebook, on Instagram. I'll post it up on Twitter as well, just with the name Liddy P. But yeah, they will be up on there. And I think in the next couple of weeks, I will also write up another short story as part of my blog on Medium. The link is available through my website, which is pinfold-photographic.co.uk. But otherwise, thank you all again for listening, and I will be organising a couple more sit-in episodes. I think now I'm a bit more aware of a few more restrictions coming into place, so I will keep an eye on that. But I do have some other sit-in episode ideas in the pipeline for you. So yeah, until that happens, I will speak to you all again in the near future. Bye. My podcast cover shows my own image created using Canva. The theme music is provided by Purple Planet Music. Check out their royalty-free music at purple-planet.com.